So the story I came across, I thought we need to dive a little deeper into this. It is someone making the case for snooping on your kid's phone. So a couple of different takes on this one. Obviously, some parents feel it's okay to snoop on kids' phones. Others rather feel that it's an invasion of their privacy. I wanted to get a take from Dr. Sara Grimes, who joins us from time to time. She's a professor at McGill University. She's an expert in children's digital media culture and children's rights. So, Dr. Grimes, first of all, thank you for coming back. And just overall, give me your reaction to this article and what you think, just by virtue of posing it and putting it out there.
Yeah, okay. So the headline is kind of shocking. And when I first read it, I was very much against it. But actually, the article itself doesn't really promote snooping. So after looking at the arguments, it's a much more moderate and much more building trust with your child approach than it first seems.
Okay, well, then let me dive a little deeper into that. So obviously context is important, right? And the idea being, and I thought this was the most interesting part, it matters when you start doing this, because obviously it's a lot easier when your child is young than if you're dealing with a teenager. So is that okay as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, it's a more natural time. They're asking for a phone. You finally give them a phone, but it can be a condition, right? It's like, I need to know your password in case you forget it,
right,
as well as because I'm going to help you learn how to be safe with this by checking in and helping you, make sure your settings are good and, checking for any dangerous people or dangerous content. So that's a really kind of easy time to do it. It can be a condition on getting a phone. But I think that, and the article explains this as well, it's something that you can introduce in the later years as well, in an age-appropriate kind of a way that's respectful of the normal level of privacy and the trust that you're trying to build with your child, whatever age they are.
Yeah, and I guess that trust is also, and I think it outlines this as well, it's one thing to say you need to look at the phone. It's another to snoop, as the article headline says. So is the idea then to have a discussion and let that child know, you know what, I'm going to be checking on your phone rather than having yourself, I guess, found out or caught?
Yeah, I think that that's like the number one part of like what made the article and the advice that's given in the article so much kind of like better and following best practices than what the headline implies. It's done with the child's knowledge.
Right.
The checks themselves could be random. It doesn't always have to be, I'm going to check tomorrow, so delete all your,
sure,
potentially dangerous content. But that the child is aware that this is going to happen and also is aware of why, right? So it's also this opening of having conversations that are incredibly important. I kind of saw it more as you are coaching your child in how to be safe with their phone, and that does require you having some supervision more at the beginning or with a child who needs it. And then as they age and become more mature and have shown themselves able to navigate, what to do when you get a bad, text message from a bully at school or your friend posts something embarrassing about you somewhere, and you have those skills, then there can be more trust that the kid will come to you and ask for help instead of having the need for that monitoring and supervision, which we give them in all areas of their lives anyway, right, when they're young or just learning a new skill or kind of just struggling with a particular issue.
And what about the idea of letting them know? So if you're about to look at your child's phone, right, to emphasize you're not trying to catch them doing something wrong, how important is that?
Yeah, I think it's really, really key because, for a lot of young people, the phone is where they talk to their friends. It's where they write their, poems and their notes and they're really kind of doing a lot of identity exploration as well as like building their relationships with others in oftentimes a way that requires a certain level of privacy. And it's not necessarily great that they're doing that on the phone. There's a lot of ways to do that, but they are. It's an easy tool and other kids are doing it too. And they're sending each other messages. So it can seem extremely privacy invading. So I think really being transparent about it, being upfront about what you're looking at. Look, I'm not going to read your text messages with your best friend. I don't see any other indication that there's a problem there. It would be equivalent of reading a note or a letter that they had received from their classmate that you don't suspect anything anything problematic is happening. So you can have guidelines too for yourself, and maybe even agree with your kid about what those are going to be. Now, if there's red flags in what they're asking you to not look at, then why? Why do you not want me to look at your direct messages in Roblox? What's going on there? And then have those conversations. And as the parent, especially with a younger kid, you can always insist that this needs to happen. But I think having those opportunities to have conversations for the kid to express where their expectations are privacy, even if as a parent, as a family, you don't agree that a 10-year-old should have privacy in that realm, having that conversation is really important to be able to figure out how to then build it, right? As you need to build trust with your kid, they also need to build a private life. So, you have to help them do that.
I would just ask it as a final question. So it says when to let go. When is the time to let go?
Yeah, I also agree with that part of the article that when, you shouldn't wait until they're 18 or 19 unless there's something really problematic going on in their lives that requires, an unusual extra amount of intervention. But for regular kids, I think it's when, you're at this point where they're going off and you're not completely sure where they are all evening. You have a sense, but you also know that you can trust them. And you know that they have the skills and the literacy and kind of just the resiliency to reach out if something goes wrong. Because I think that's ultimately what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to do this not to be like prison guards. We're trying to coach them through building this ability to navigate this on their own. And that can happen, it will really depend on the kid and what's going on in their lives and keeping regular check-ins to make sure that just because they were mature and fine at age 15 doesn't mean that they are 6 months later, if something troubling is happening at school. But in all of these cases, conversations and basing it on that larger relationship that you have with them is really that's the most important part.
All right. We will leave it at that. Always appreciate your insight. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Sara Grimes, professor at McGill. There you go. It's okay. Just don't like the word snooping on their phones, but yeah, it's okay to do. And the earlier you do it, the younger, the better.